Okay, here we go. Started off with the wrong music. That's the wrong button. Got the right music going on now. Welcome to the Dean Arnold Podcast. It is July 5th, and we're going to have some fun today. Talking about my good friend, Gordon Wetmore. He's no longer with us. He passed about 10 years ago. I made a hour and a half long full feature documentary that premiered at the IMAX about 10 years ago called Harriet's Secret. And at the end, it was in memory of Gordon Wetmore, because Gordon was a good friend of mine. And I'm going to tell you about him. He was a portrait artist and other things, and a great conversationalist, which we talked about a couple of days ago, how important that is. So let's go ahead and move on with our show today, and then we'll get talking about Gordon. Share, subscribe, like. Go to my website, Dean Arnold for Congress. I'm running for Congress. You can give. I'm bringing sanity to an insane world. Yes, indeed. And make comments, ask questions. Should have live chat enabled on YouTube. So there you go. A little different today. I got a shirt with a logo on it. I don't usually wear logos on my shirt, but there's a C there on this strangely bright gold colored shirt that I'm wearing. And that C is for Chattanooga, University of Chattanooga. And since I am a Chattanooga aficionado, actually literally wrote the book, I'm happy to wear a Chattanooga logo on my shirt today. All right. Let's talk about the verse of the day. I think I got it queued up. Supposed to. Boom. Okay. Galatians 5, very famous passage. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no law. All right, we're not going to read the whole passage, but the first part is kind of the gist of it, and it is a famous passage. One of the reasons I wanted to talk about it today is because of our subject, which is Gordon Wetmore. Gordon was very interesting. He was the kindest, gentlest guy you ever meet. He was a big guy. He was big. He's like 6'5" and kind of hulky and whatever, but he was gentle and kind and patient. But he always would talk to me about how he had this problem with anger. Okay. I got this anger problem and I just have to overcome it. Well, I never saw it. Now, maybe I just didn't know him well enough. Maybe those closer to him have some stories, but I never saw it. I finally had to conclude that it's one of those things where, because he had a little bit of it, but not much of it, he was acutely aware of what was needed to not be that way. So I think Gordon really excelled in the fruits of the Spirit, because he must have had some little anger problem somewhere and it tormented him and he wanted to overcompensate. But he had the fruits of the Spirit. So good on him. All right, let's bring this back up and let's go to the Luke passage. All right, once again, as is the wont of the Orthodox Church, just the church in general, the tradition of the church, to have these resurrection passages on the church calendar all the time. Verse 12, Luke 24, but Peter arose and ran to the tomb, and stooping down, he saw the linen cloths lying by themselves, and he departed, marveling to himself at what had happened. So here's Jesus seeing the Shroud of Turin. Wasn't called that because I hadn't gotten to Turin yet. But he's looking at these various cloths. There's the face napkin and there's the shroud and these things. And he's looking at it, marveling to himself at what had happened. Because if someone had stolen the body, they would have kept the linen cloths on and just stolen the body somewhere. And they wouldn't have taken the time to unwrap all the linen cloths and fold them up and everything. So that's part of the evidence for the resurrection. And then they have a conversation. Jesus has a conversation with the two guys on the road to Emmaus, Cleopas and, is it Luke? I think it might be Luke, but anyway, um, Jesus talks to them. That's a famous story. I'm not going to give all the details. But it says that as Jesus was telling them about how he was prophesied about all through the Old Testament, and they didn't get it, he's like, "Oh, foolish ones, slow at heart," verse 25, "to believe all the things that prophets have spoken. Ought not the Christ to have suffered these things and to enter into his glory?" So they were looking for the conquistador like everybody else. And Jesus is saying, no, wasn't the Messiah supposed to suffer these things? So what scriptures are they looking at? Isaiah 53, probably, Psalm 22, various famous passages where the Messiah is suffering. And they just kind of ignored that and went on their own way and kept looking for the conquistador. But now they're trying to figure it out because he got killed. And after 3 days, looks like he might have risen again. And these disciples still can't figure it out. And Jesus is like, you guys are so slow. You're really having a hard time getting it. Let's see. Then when they finally stop and they have a meal together, as they're breaking bread and Jesus blessed the bread and broke it, that's when their eyes were opened. And some people like to say, and I think it's pretty fair to say, that this is a passage that can relate to the Eucharist, that it's not until you take the Eucharist that your eyes are really opened and you see who Jesus Christ is and how it all works together. So that is a famous passage that we're looking at here in Luke chapter 24. And let's go on to our excuse me, saint passage. All right, today we're going to look at I've got to copy and paste for you guys. Sorry about that. Venerable Athanasius, founder of the Great Lavra and Cenobitic monasticism on Mount Athos, and his 6 disciples. Okay, so he started out as a young boy orphaned at the early age. He was raised by a pious nun, and he became a pious little boy. His lessons became easy to him, so he was a good student, smart little kid, named Abraham. And he got taken because he was so sharp, I guess, to the Byzantine emperor in Rome. He was located in, what's the name of this town? Trebizond, which is northeast Turkey now, but was part of the Byzantine Empire. And he was taken to the emperor because he was so sharp. And he got this teacher named Athanasius, who was a famous instructor of youth. And Abraham led a strict, abstinent life. He slept little, only sitting upon a stool. He ate barley bread and water for his only nourishment. And when his teacher Athanasius, through human weakness, became jealous of his student, Abraham gave up his position and fled away. So Abraham wasn't interested in causing any problems, and his teacher Athanasius became jealous of him because he was so smart. Gotta love it, huh? And he got the heck out of there. Well, there was another nephew of the emperor who ended up becoming the emperor. He really was impressed by Abraham during this whole time. And then there was another head of a monastery that was also impressed with Abraham. One of them wanted to become a military officer and be involved in the kingdom, and he didn't want that. Abraham just desperately wanted to become a monk. Just make me a monk. I want to be a monk. And he fell at his feet and begged this iguman if he would allow him to be a monk. And he finally became a monk. So he got what he was longing for. Just as an aside, for no particular reason at all, last couple of days I did a deep dive on the Sound of Music movie, one of my favorites. Maybe I'll do a podcast on it. But everybody loves the wedding scene, where they're getting married in that gorgeous chapel, and you got the military man and Julie Andrews, Maria, who's pretty, next to him, and it's a wonderful romantic movie, and I love it. I got nothing against it. But I was doing the history of the real story, and the broad strokes are true. She was a nun, and she went to be a nanny for this captain with 7 kids, and they end up getting married. So the broad strokes of that are true. It's true that she left when he asked her to marry him. and then came back because the nun said she had to. But what you don't get in the movie, which it just doesn't work, is Maria, when they were married, she wasn't in love with him and she didn't want to do it. She did it out of obedience. And she was mad at God because God did not allow her to become a nun. She really wanted to become a nun. She grew out of it. She grew to love Captain Von Trapp, as the story goes. But on the wedding day itself, it wasn't so great. Pretty funny. So here's this guy, Abraham, who begs the head of the monastery, please let me become a monk. And he had the world by the tail. He could have done anything he wanted to, but he wanted to be a monk. So he got to be a monk. And at some point, his name got changed by that head of that monastery from Abraham to Athanasius, which is funny because that's the name of the guy that was jealous of him and he had to flee from him, his teacher. He gets named the same name, Athanasius. I don't know if that's funny, haha, but it's pretty interesting. There's other stuff that goes on. I'll leave it alone. But at the end of his life, he wants to go up and he's founded another monastery. He's founded like 3 monasteries. He's got this other monastery that is founded that's going pretty well. And it's late in his life. And he decides he wants to go up and inspect the roof. So him and 6 of his guys all go up there and inspect the roof. And the roof implodes. And several of them died. 5 of the brethren immediately give up their souls to God. Athanasius and the architect Daniel, thrown upon stones, remained alive. And they all heard the saint cry out to the Lord, glory to thee, O God, Lord Jesus Christ, help me. And the brethren, weeping, began to dig their father out of the rubble, but they found him dead. So that's how he died, on top of the chapel, the cathedral, whatever, and the roof implodes and he dies that way. So just a different kind of story. Nothing wrong with it, but interesting. Saint, and this was like 900s. Saint Athanasius, formerly called Abraham, who lived in northeast Turkey, part of the Byzantine Empire, goes to Constantinople to serve the emperor, but ends up founding several monasteries. Okay, interesting. All right, now let's talk about my friend Gordon. And so what I have to do is I have to get rid of that, bring in a new one, and let's see how I do. Oh, yes, nice. Okay, this is Gordon. This is a painting of Gordon. Gordon was a portrait artist, a fine portrait artist. And he founded the Portrait Society of America. I must have been in like 1980 or 1990 or something. It became and is the largest portrait society in the world. So here's Gordon, just the portrait artist in Chattanooga, Tennessee, who founds the largest portrait artist society in the country. And he and I start hanging out. And we're hanging out because he is a coffee addict like I was. And we hung out at a coffee shop called Greyfriars, which was by far the best coffee shop in Chattanooga. It went out of business and reemerged as Goodman Coffee. Ian Goodman being the great maestro of that organization. But Greyfriars was around for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And Gordon and I were there every day. I was there every day from 9 o'clock until midnight, basically. Whole nother life. And Gordon would come in there quite a bit, and we'd have conversations. We'd get to know each other, and we'd talk. Remember a couple of days ago, we talked about not being so talkative, all these people who talk all the time and never listen, and how it's important to have a conversation. Well, Gordon and I would always have a conversation. Gordon was a great conversationalist. And what does that require? Well, first of all, you have to have something interesting to say, which he always did. And then you have to have the self-discipline and ability to shut up and let the other person talk. And if they're not talking enough, ask them a question about themselves or whatever. Wait. Ask another question if you have to. Keep digging and get the other person to talk and you listen. One person talks, next person talks, and the next person talks. And they go back and forth, and it's a conversation. Well, Gordon always did that. He was great at it. He was insistent that he was going to have a conversation with you. He was going to listen to you, and he was going to ask good questions. And we had a great time together. And at that time, I was a news publisher. I had a news publication called the Chattanooga Facts that went to 10,000 fax machines a week. And Gordon loved it. He loved hearing my stories and who I was talking to and what I was coming up with this week and that sort of thing. While we're at it here, let's see if I can, I don't know how, dang it. Seems like I'd be able to, but I guess not. I have to stop the screen, and I got to share the screen, and I go here, but here's one of Gordon's many paintings. He's good. Really nice work. This is probably, he was involved in several like books, like one on the Promised Land, one on Ireland, and he'd get, $20, $30, $50,000 per portrait painting these very famous people. He painted Richard Nixon, the president. He painted Jack Nicklaus, the famous golfer. He painted Princess Grace. He painted a lot of famous people and got his name out there. But anyway, so we would hang out, and we were friends for several years, and he loved to hear about the investigative reporting that I was doing, and that's this, that, and the other. Well, one of the things that I would do is I would I'd do a cartoon. I'd find a cartoon. There was a guy named Wayne Stayskull out of the Tampa Tribune. I got his permission to reprint his cartoons, but of course they were of a national flavor. But I wanted to do cartoons of more of a local flavor, and I got a couple of friends that were good at that sort of thing, and got them to draw them for me. But I needed to do something a little more local. Let's see. Aha. So I got him to, I asked him, I said, would you be willing to draw my cartoons for my publication? Couldn't pay him, but he loved it. He loved the mixing it up and the humor and the whole thing. And so he agreed to do it. He said, now here's the one thing. He says, I'm going to initial your cartoons. He says, I can't put my signature on them. He says, people pay like $30,000, $40,000 for my signature on a portrait. So I just can't sign your cartoons. I was like, that's okay. So he started doing the cartoons. Well, he must have done, several hundred cartoons before it was all over. This is a cover of a book that I did, Chattanooga Facts' Local Cartoons. There's some examples of Gordon's work up above. This book, the foreword, was actually done right there by Mayor Bob Corker. Can you stand it? He became the senator. He became the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. And he was writing the foreword to my cartoon book. I mean, can you stand it? I'll probably do a podcast on Bob Corker. He's a really phenomenal dude. But anyway, we were friends too. But Gordon did these. Now I'm going to show you one of his cartoons that he did for me. Let's see what I can do here. Oops. Share screen. And we go here. This is one of Gordon's cartoons. Okay, so Corker runs for mayor, and he raises like 3 times more than anyone's even thought about raising for the mayor's race. And everywhere you look, it's Corker, Corker, Corker. So I just thought it'd be funny to do a cartoon like this, where everywhere you look, it says Corker, and the guy below says, who do you think's the front runner? And Gordon adds the plane up top carrying the banner, and then down here to the right, he's got a dog with a little sweater that says I love Bob. So that was all part of Gordon's work. But another reason I picked this particular cartoon is because really That scene right there is Greyfriars Coffee Shop outside. A couple guys drinking coffee at a table outside, and where he and I had a lot of conversations. So I just felt like I wanted to share this cartoon with you because it's reflective of the environments where Gordon and I hung out. What else? Well, after I graduate from the Chattanooga Facts, I start writing books. And I decided to do this epic project on Chattanooga, the city, its history, its current situation, its renaissance, where it's going, et cetera, et cetera. And it was a very successful project. It's probably been my most read book. Tens of thousands have read it. Gordon loved the idea. And we would, get together every day and drink coffee and conversations. And I would tell him the progress and all that's going and all these famous people that I was interviewing. And he really enjoyed that. Never asked him for an interview, even though he knew a lot of the players and could have got me some good advice. But what he did was he got me an endorsement. He got me the endorsement of my life. He had painted, I think, the uncle of John Meacham. John Meacham first he was a reporter for the Chattanooga Times. I actually knew him back then when he was doing a political beat. Knew him a little bit. Meacham was a Macaulay grad, but he became editor of Newsweek, climbing up the ladder. And let me see, I can bring myself up here. Became editor of Newsweek, and then he started writing books himself and won the Pulitzer Prize, I think, for a book about Andrew Jackson. Anyway, Gordon knew him, wrote him a long email about what I was up to, asked for an endorsement, and I got an excellent endorsement from John Meacham. Basically said, this is a book well worth reading. And I have used that endorsement again and again and again. So Gordon did me some solids. And but I never asked him for an interview for the book, which he maybe was bummed by. But being Gordon, he never said anything. But it worked out really well because just before it was time to take the book to print, I needed to have someone write an introduction for the book and preface, introduction, whatever you call it. And I asked Gordon to do it because he knew all the players and he knew me and he was the perfect person. And he wrote this great introduction. If you want to get the book, Old Money, New South, I encourage you to get it. You'll see Gordon's introduction if you get it. Also had various artists do sketches at the beginning of each chapter. Gordon was one of those artists. So we had that going on. But that's another Gordon story that he was very proud of having written the introduction for that book. What else can I tell you? So his portrait society would have a conference every year, big conference. Hundreds of portrait artists come from around the country, around the world, to attend and hear these famous portrait artists, the most famous in the world, come and speak. Gordon would speak occasionally, but he was more the behind the scenes organizer. If you want to accomplish something, make sure you don't worry about who gets the credit. He was emblematic of that statement. Anyway, he would get me in free. These things cost a lot of money, and I didn't have a lot of money back then. But so you get me a couple of free tickets, and I'd stay in a hotel in Philly or down in Dallas, Texas, or Atlanta. My daughter has become a famous artist, and she was an aspiring artist back in those days, 13, 14, 15. I got to take her to some of the banquets and some of the things, and that was kind of fun. But it was a great privilege to be a friend, a VIP of Gordon's, and get to go to those conferences and meet various artists and that sort of thing. So that's another part of the journey. I made a list here. Oh, he needed a video done. I was sort of dabbling in video work back then, and he asked me to do a video about his work as a portrait artist, to sell clients. And I did like a 5-minute video, 3-minute video. It was pretty good. Wasn't great, but it was pretty good. And in exchange, he did 2 giant paintings of my children, pastels. And I have them on my wall over here. but they're fantastic. It's priceless. My children were 11 and 9 at the time, but it was a totally uneven trade. But I'm so glad I got it. And he also did a what you call a study of me. We were just hanging out in my little apartment flat place back at the foot of Lookout Mountain, whatever it was. And as I was sitting at my desk, he had a little pad and he was doing a little watercolor. The next thing you know, he cranked out this. He called it a study. But that is a portrait, you might say, of me by Gordon Wetmore as I'm writing the book Old Money, New South. And that's a famous desk I'm sitting at that I'll do a podcast about. That was my Blueberry Mac that I still have. I don't think it works anymore, but and icon of the Apostle John in the background. My great grandfather who invented the Pullman sleeping car, top left. But he captured a moment, and so I'm very, very thankful for that. Mostly he was just a good friend, and always cheerful, always encouraging. Oh, to celebrate Old Money, New South and all that sort of stuff, he did an event. He was just this guy that had panache. He just had something about him. He had flair. And his studio was on the top floor of the American Bank building, which was like 14 floors. It's the 14th floor. It wasn't even the floor. He called it the penthouse. It's kind of the top floor kind of thing. It was huge. And it really made an impression. And then when Old Money New South kind of debuted and came out and was successful and everything, he had an event up there with food and hors d'oeuvres. And he had gotten, in some trade, the use of a Chambers symphonic four-piece string symphonette. I want to call it a band, but you can't call it a band. But anyway, he got that, and so he decided to use it for this event. So we've got the violin and the viola and the cello and the bass doing their thing, and you got the hors d'oeuvres, and you got all these people, and it's all about my book coming out and everything, where Gordon has written the intro, and it was nice. I mean, it was a moment. So he did that for me. So I appreciate Gordon for that. And then he suddenly died. Next thing I know, a friend of mine says, "Have you heard Gordon's sick?" I was like, "No." And, a couple of weeks later, he's dead. He'd gotten some rare disease, and he died at age 73. And I really miss him. That was about 10 years ago. Gordon Wetmore died on us. A lot of wonderful things said about him on Facebook, related to the Portrait Society. And I wrote 3 articles about him because I love the guy. They're on my website. And then I did the documentary that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, where at the end it says, "In memory of Gordon Wetmore." So Gordon, a longtime friend, just a guy that I'll always be grateful for. I'm going to bring his picture back up. Just a guy I'll always be grateful for. I'm glad I had the friendship. And he was a mentor, but wasn't trying to be a mentor, wasn't acting like a mentor, didn't have the airs, the arrogance of being a mentor. He was just a friend who happened to be 20 years older. Yeah, there you go. Gordon Wetmore, a true friend. I'm bringing sanity to an insane world. And I'm not just a right-wing paleo-conservative. I'm a friend of artists and people like Gordon Wetmore, who also is a paleo-conservative, by the way, but didn't come across that way. You'd never know it. He was in drag. Yeah. Any comments? I think we might have a comment. Share, subscribe, give to my campaign, DeanArnoldForCongress.com. All right, let's bring it up here. Hi, says, I can't read. I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to drag this over here so I can read it. Haksha Digital. Haksha Hitai. I have no idea who that is. Then that same person says amazing. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Rakshadatai. Is that Indian? I don't know. Here we go. Hi, are you okay? Says the next person. And I can't read that person's name either. It's confusing. Hi, are you okay? That is an excellent question. I think I'm okay. I think I'm bringing sanity to an insane world, but that may not be the case. And you may be asking because you don't think I'm very sane, and you're saying, hey, are you okay? Well, yeah, I'm okay. I'm great. All right, guys. Thanks for the comments and questions. And I think we're going to head on out of here. But I've enjoyed this podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it because Gordon is. Dean Arnold.